This is where we get this horrid feedback loop with social media censorship, in that the one tool that the public has against this type of government secrecy and a government that's not willing to play by the rules is supposed to be the fourth branch, the media, that's supposed to be exposing it. But when you have the media working hand in hand with the government and they're all on the same page on what message they want getting out there, it makes it so much harder to get that message out there. And social media was supposed to be a great equalizer, because we the people are the content providers. And you saw this in the election of Trump, and where social media was able to get past the big mainstream media barriers, and then they cracked down since that. And then we've had this massive social media censorship campaign ever since. And so how do we counteract these type of things? And obviously terrorism still does trigger something in people, so it makes it that much harder to get through using whatever media that is free enough to actually have views expressed openly. So yeah, we are in a real quandary. It's a real problem right now, and it's the courts, have the potential of a role with this Missouri suit to, really dig into a real problem. And hopefully, we saw it break in the 70s when you had the church hearings and such. We actually got to really dig into a lot of the secrecy from the CIA and the FBI and all that was going on there, at least partially dug into it. Maybe this lawsuit has the potential to have that type of break when we see how open the collusion has been between the government and the and the social media companies on censorship. But it's we'll see how far it gets. And it's there's only so much they can do, and as long as the media that the majority of the public digests is so willing to go along with the federal government's line, it's going to be hard to break that open as well. But it's all the more important for different voices out there, and as long as there's at least demonetized or not voices like DarkHorse and such that can get the opposite views out there, there's some hope. But
well, I think I want to go back. I invoked fascism earlier when I was talking about the collusion between the federal government and these private entities to censor. And I want to, I'm sure that sounded like hyperbole to some, but I want to point out just how frightening, the sine qua non of fascism is the hybrid between corporate and governmental power. Mm-hmm. And it always comes with the demonization of minorities. And in this case, I think the partnership is different than it's ever been. This is a historically novel version of fascism. But not only do you have the federal government meeting with platforms and giving them guidance on who it wants censored, but you also have the power of these corporations to shut down would-be competitors. So if the argument is, well, you can't use Twitter because Twitter has the right to throw you off, and then the answer is, well, okay, then I'll use Parler. Well, no, you won't use Parler, because Parler is depending on an architecture that we control. And so the point is, Twitter would be insane to cannibalize its own business by throwing people off, so that basically, A, there was a large population that needed to go somewhere else, and B, that it became an uninteresting platform because it was just a single big echo chamber, right? On the other hand, in the context where you can't create that alternative service, because if you do create it and it becomes wildly popular, it will be shut down, then the point is, oh, well, Twitter now has an anti-competitive advantage. It not only does it have the freedoms of a publisher and the rights of a platform simultaneously, but it also has the ability to create an absolutely gargantuan barrier to entry for a competitor who would take advantage of the insanity of Twitter. And so that combination of things is this fusion of governmental power and private corporate power together in one entity that is now in doing many of the things that are classically involved in fascism. It is censoring, it is punishing in extrajudicial ways. And it is basically designating minorities who are not deserving of the protections that citizens ordinarily have. So at what point do you have enough circumstantial evidence that something that an objective observer would call fascism is apparently alive and well in the United States in 2022? At what point do you have enough evidence to say, holy moly, it's happening here?
Well, I mean, and that's the question is, who can do something with that? And, at a certain point, we've talked about, the limits of the courts, but the courts have some ability in addressing that. But, it's really a matter of public opinion. And, and given that the collusion is between the media and the government, trying to sway public opinion is particularly difficult. I mean, just the absurdity that fact checkers treat statements by the government as the truth when they're deciding what's true and not. I mean, I can't think of anything that is just more insane than that. And the whole point of media is to check the government. So to take the government's word is just, it's kind of mind-blowing, and it shows how warped our current media environment is right now. And at your fascism point, the fact that there's this such reverence for government is, it's very novel right now, in a novel way, but it certainly shows that conjunction between government and private entities that we should be concerned about.
Yep, and it also, just you could spend all day spotting the little asymmetries and arbitrary forms of power, but the ability to throw people off social media on the basis that what they are saying is so dangerous that it cannot be allowed obviously creates a mechanism whereby they can construct a pretense of consensus where there is no consensus whatsoever. So the basic point is, well, how do you know that that statement is dangerous? And the answer is because all the experts agree. Well, what happens when you throw off anybody who says, I don't agree, is you get all the people who agree, so it looks like a consensus, and that then creates a false justification for continuing with an even more aggressive policy. So
we keep seeing that. We saw that with the Hunter Biden laptop. We saw that with, the lab leak theory, the efficiency of masking and shutdowns. And we saw it in the 2020 election things. I mean,
safe and effective vaccines.
Yeah, and then vaccines. And it's, I mean, if you look at the on the election context, just abstractly, the almost immediate demonization of anyone wanting to challenge the validity of elections. I mean, if you don't have an absolute free right to challenge to allege an election is corrupt, you're going to get corrupt elections. I mean, that is the only protection against that type of corruption, is the ability to call it out. And so, but when you have this, this very quick, agreement in the media that it's all bogus, it undermines that, and that gets to the core of our whole governmental system, is the ability to challenge elections. And then obviously the vaccines, I mean, the safety of our lives and just the pressure that's been put on vaccines. I mean, it was just like a month or two ago, I saw something in my grocery store of it was a cardboard cutout of a kid in a superhero outfit saying, I got my vaccine. I'm, once they approved it for 5-year-olds or whatever. I mean, just the idea that you can't challenge that type of thing is really.
Yes. Even where the challenges are wrong, they are fundamental, right? Yeah. It is the fact that it is challenged and it stands up to challenge that tells you that it was free and fair or close to it. And we know that we know two things. One, both sides challenge the fairness of elections when they lose, right? Mm-hmm. That's an unfortunate fact. I don't want to live in that country, but that's the country we live in, right? The Democrats did not treat the Trump election as free and fair. They demonized it as downstream of a Russian campaign to sway the election.
Remember 2000 and 2004 too. They're both, you had Congress members challenging the electoral count in Congress based on
Yep.
those elections as well. It's happened a lot.
It's happened a lot. And so the point is, that's the world we live in, and we have to accept it, not, cherry pick and look at one side as, crying foul when it loses. The fact is, we have a crisis of confidence in our electoral system. And, I think, frankly, rightly so. I think there's a lot at stake in elections, and we're told that, it's an existential threat to the nation if, the other side wins. Frankly, we're told that no matter who the enemy is, right? Mitt Romney was, the reason that we couldn't engage in discussing a third party option, and then it became Trump. And people don't remember that that's always the argument.
Remember the demonization of Obama as well. I mean, both sides do it. It's just part of the nature of what it is we're going to have both sides demonizing the other side. And that's why you need to have, a more detached way of looking at election challenges that doesn't tie in, doesn't turn on who it is. It's supposed to be a process that's there, and it needs to be explored and not, immediately demonized. It's
right. And as you point out, I like your formulation a lot, that if you forbid the challenge, then you enable the distortion, right? You enable collusion to affect these elections. And frankly, the Hunter Biden laptop story, which I remember being demonized for saying, hey, this is serious and important, and it does involve the president, because what Biden was talking about was influence peddling, which was clearly something that Biden had engaged in over his career.
And then you also get the blackmail ability. I mean, once someone engages and once they allow themselves to be bribed, they then can be blackmailed. It's a big deal.
Right. But the point is, the suppression of that story was an attempt by whoever did it to sway an election, right? It's newsworthy information that laptop exists. It was clear at the time that it was fairly clear at the time that it wasn't phony. And yeah, its emergence was unfortunate for Team Blue, but I guess the point would be, hey, how about nominating people who don't have this kind of shit in their background, right? When you make it impossible to discuss conspiracy, you are giving a gift to those who would conspire. That's the point. And when you make it impossible to discuss the corruption of an election, you make it possible to corrupt elections. And I don't know that principle must have a name, and I don't happen to know what it is. But if you don't want to see the thing, you need the process in which we can explore whether it has taken place. And as soon as you start forbidding it, you are guaranteeing it. That's the point.